Hi, everyone. This is Brandon Mayer with Implementation Specialists. Thank you so much for joining our webinar here today on Key2Act job cost revenue performance obligations. I hope everyone is off to a great start of their day. Our presenter here today is Tim Braun, who will be going through this in much more detail with you. But before I hand it over to Tim, I just want to let you know that this is being recorded. So if you do want to refer back to it at a later time or share it with someone else who may find benefit, that will be available for you. Also, if you do have questions throughout the webinar, I'll go ahead and be monitoring the questions pane. So please don't hesitate to put your questions in there, and we'll be sure to get those addressed. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to you, Tim.
All right, thanks, Brandon. So for the agenda, we'll talk. I'll give you a definition of revenue performance obligations, and I'll be referring to those as RPO. You'll hear me talk about RPO codes and such. I'll talk about the effects of upgrading. I'm assuming most of you will be currently using percentage of completion accounting. So we'll talk about some of the ramifications there. We'll go over the RPO code setup and the actual how you recognize revenue, look at some reports and the things that you go through on month-end closing. For a definition, the revenue performance obligation revenue recognition method is used by companies that enter into contracts with customers to transfer goods or services, or a contract for the transfer of non-financial assets. So here's the definition. I don't want to read it word for word, but if you're wondering how this affects you, do you need to switch over from POC to RPO? Check with your current certified public accountant. I'm not a CPA, I think it depends on your business, the industry, and how you're doing things today. So I would get advice on your CPA for that. When can revenue be recognized? What we do is in job costs, you set up RPO codes for recognizing revenue, and you can revenue or recognize the revenue on each code when there's a transfer, basically a transfer of ownership. The goods or services can be consumed or used by the customer. So instead of doing a percentage of completion that most of you are probably used to, this has you more so breaking contract down into smaller pieces, and you can recognize those pieces when they're done and ready for the customer to use them. For upgrading, if you want to use RPO, Key2Act has added the RPO functionality to 2016 R3, and also it's available in the 2018 R1 and R2 releases. So I would, if you're going to upgrade, I would go to the latest version possible there. So the way the upgrade will go is, if you're currently using a POC revenue recognition, once you upgrade and then make the selection to change from POC to RPO method of revenue recognition, the code is written in such a way that you'll continue to do POC revenue recognition for the jobs that are open at the time of the upgrade. You've already recognized some of the revenue on those jobs, so you don't have to go back and now try to create revenue codes and catch the difference and that kind of thing. You run those jobs through the existing POC process until you close them out. So Key2Act is tracking those in the job master table. For new jobs, once you upgrade and again change from POC to RPO, all new jobs moving forward will be using the RPO method of recognizing revenue. For closing jobs, there are no changes. Key2Act designed this in such a way that you'll see a lot of similarities between your current POC process and the RPO process. So just like with POC, you still go through that process when you close a job, and it makes the final journal entry for the job. Then it'll come out of the monthly RPO process. For the RPO code setup, basically you have your job contract amount and you allocate it out to job revenue codes. So this is actually a process that's pretty similar to bill codes. If you have AIA jobs or jobs using bill codes, you break out that contract into bill codes. Well, it's the same thing with the RPO codes. You break it out. For smaller jobs, it's fine to just have one RPO code for the entire job. So I think some customers will be using just one RPO code, but others, depending on the size, length of the job, maybe you might get more detailed. And of course, it depends on the type of work you have and if you have actual definable deliverables that you can say, okay, this is done now. There's two revenue types, a point in time. With that one, that will be the most common one. And the revenue is recognized at completion. So when you're 100% done, there's a process where you go in and mark the revenue code to be recognized, and then it'll get picked up at the end of the month when you create your revenue recognition entry. Overtime is a little bit different. Basically, with that one, you can recognize on a percentage level over the life of the job. Again, I would ask your CPA for advice on this, but so for instance, you could recognize 20% of the, when you're 20% through, 50 when you're 50. You have to go in there and enter the percent at the end of the month process for those types. But my understanding is these will not be commonly used in most industries. And then also as part of the RPO code setup, you assign all job cost codes to revenue codes. So costs are matched to revenue when revenue is recognized. And let's just switch over to GP, show you a few things. So on this one, here's the setup. There's just one posting option, and I've changed from percentage of completion to revenue performance obligations. That's all there is to it. When we go look at some of the job setup info, for those RPO jobs, it'll enable a new button at the bottom of the window in job maintenance. See this revenue codes button, and here is where you create the revenue codes. And like the bill code window, it's telling you at the bottom as you create the codes, the expected contract compared to revenue codes, so that you can, balance or assign the entire contract amount out to revenue codes. Have some fields you can use if you want to track start and completion dates. Those are optional. Here's the drop down on the point in time, overtime, just the two methods. And again, point in time will be the most common. You can do change orders. If you do a change order, the change order amount needs to be added to either create a new RPO code, or you can add it to an existing one depending on your contract type. To assign cost codes, you hit this button here, and you can see this one had three cost codes assigned to it. As you're assigning, you'll see the unassigns on the left. You can either move them all over or do them one at a time. If you forget to assign a cost code, those costs are going to be recognized at the end of the month. So let's go back to the revenue recognition process. So these are just some of the things you do when you start to close the month. Just as with the POC process today, you want to post all your open batches through the GL. And the reason, again, with POC, it's going to drive up your percentage of completion. With RPO, you want to get those costs in there so they get included in that revenue entry as well. So forecast revisions, they don't have an effect on the revenue recognition with RPO. So a big difference there with POC, of course, you increase that forecast, and that's going to affect your percent complete on that job. So I think your project managers will still want to do forecast revisions to help them manage the job, but there's not that urgency to get them in at the end of the month as much, because revenue recognition is going to be based on the RPO codes that you select to recognize revenue at the time. Post-confirmed change orders, of course, and you're going to have RPO codes on those. Do your billings for the month and all those kind of things. So now the revenue recognition for the RPO codes, a couple of different ways you can do it. There's a revenue code status window I'll show you in a minute. Basically, in job status, you can review the status of the revenue codes. You can also do a revision for that job directly, from job status. And the other window is called revenue code percent mass revision entry. And that's where you can select RPO codes across all jobs. So at the end of the month, you can make all your selections in that window. Or you can do them in job status as the month is going on and mark them 100% complete. We'll take a look at the edit list. There's also a SQL RPO profit and loss report. That report shows revenue recognized per job for closed months only. So for the current month, you have to look at the revenue edit list. Let's go back to GP. So in this, from job status, again, like job maintenance, once you've selected the RPO method, this button, a new button is enabled called this one, revenue code status. And here you'll see all of your revenue codes for the job. So this one, I got one for 32,000, one for 16,000. It's got the costs. You can drill down on the costs. This one is going to show you all of the cost codes that are assigned to that revenue code. Unlike job status, this one is going to include all cost elements. So it's got labor and materials in this example. And it's the same drill downs as if you were, coming in from job status. Just helps you see the ones that are applied specifically for each revenue code. And to do a revision, there's Add Revision Action button. And all you do here is select, enter your percent, complete. So you can see earlier I was playing around with this. I did 100 and then I set it back to 0. If you need to make a correction, if you accidentally entered 100, for instance, you'd come back here to edit that and you can set it back to 0. So that's one way to do it. The other way is this window. Revenue code percent mass revision entry. It's got a big title, and if you hit redisplay, it's going to show you all of the RPO codes out there. I only have 2 jobs set up in this sample data, but if you had many jobs, you can filter the view and then do it job by job, or for a division, a project manager, those kind of things to just filter. You can see the one I did is already marked as 100%. I don't need to include it because it's 100%. If we want to do one in this, you can either mark 100% or include. These are all point in times. If they were over time, the percent would be editable. And then you could enter like 20% for those types. So once you do this, you make your choices, you commit. Oops, I need a description. That's that. And now go to your edit list. Your POC edit list is going to be out there for those POC jobs that are still ongoing. And this is the new revenue list. And you can see it's similar to the POC edit list. Instead of contract earned, it's going to be called, you're going to see things like expected contract price, expected transaction price instead of like the whole job contract. At the right, it's far right. I hope you can see all this. Let me move it over. You still have your contract earned, your unbilled, your billings in excess. So the same calculation is going on, except that the contract earned is going to be made on these expected transaction prices of the selected RPO codes. So when you're satisfied with that, you go ahead and close your month. And then just like with POC entry, there's now a job revenue entry process where you're going to go ahead, you do your build. You can look at that report one last time. Should match the edit list after your final revisions were made. And then go ahead and post it, and it creates your journal entry. And that's really, that's the process. So as you can see, it's the process is real similar to the POC process: build, review, and post after you do your month end. A couple of other things to show you. So here, this is that RPO profit and loss report. So if you've deployed your SRS reports, you can print that right from here. And go into my other screen, we'll bring it out. So this summarizes with totals. It'll have, totals for each job, and you can do it by division if you want, because there'll be totals by division, because there'll be a journal entry for each division. And another thing, just to go back to revenue status. Oh, sorry, wrong window. If you go to build position, this window, it's still going to show you the POC calculation. That hasn't changed, but now under revenue recognize, instead of grabbing that POC calculation, it's got the 32,000. And if you click here, it shows you what that is made up of. So that was the one RPO code I had selected for this job. And with that, Brandon, I will hand it over to you to see if we had any questions or.
Yeah, excellent, Tim. Thank you for reviewing the new job cost revenue performance obligation in job cost. We did not have any questions. However, we did have one comment, and I thought I'd share. It's kind of funny. Adam said, "Doesn't RPO stand for run pass option?" So we definitely have a football fan. So thanks for that. I got a good chuckle. But as far as the revenue performance obligation, I don't see any other in the questions window. So I think we can give people a few minutes back in their day. So thank you very much for joining. If you do think of questions, Tim has that info up on the screen. Please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'd love to have that conversation with you. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Bye.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Bye.